Hello everyone. Today I want to introduce you to the wonderful Linda Strader. Hello Linda.
Hello Angelina, nice to meet you.
It's wonderful to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. So I want to just tell the listeners a little bit about you before we start talking. Linda's career as a wildland firefighter brought up challenges because at the time it wasn't something for women to do. She loved her job but faced discrimination at the time. Her novel is a memoir about rebuilding her life. And today she's a landscape architect, a certified arborist, a watercolor artist, and an author. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here. This is great.
It's wonderful to have you. So today I want to talk about love and your thoughts about love and why you write about it. But I think talking about your book a little bit and your life is amazing, will inform us how love impacted on you. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about your life and therefore what inspired you to write the memoir?
I was a firefighter for 7 years, and when my career ended, I ended up in college. And so things didn't quite go as planned. Speaking of love, I was married for 23 years and then ended my 23-year marriage, went out on my own, and promptly lost my job.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I just bought a house. So this was like, oh my gosh, what in the heck I'm going to do? So that was a very tough time. And for 2 years, I was looking for work. I really struggled, with what am I going to do with my life? My career is over. What's going to happen to me? So I spent a lot of time looking at the past because the future sure didn't look very good right then.
Right.
So here I was newly divorced, and 3 months after I lost my job, my mom died.
I'm so sorry.
And I was very close to her, so that was devastating. So I had a whole lot going on that was not looking very good. So I started reflecting back to my firefighting years, which, they were fun, but they were also very challenging. And I did have some really crazy adventures, and that's where I met my husband, was firefighting. And all of the relationships I formed with the men on my crew, I fell in love and out of love a number of times over those 7 years. So I decided to write some of this down. I did keep journals for most of my life, and at least from about 14 until I was 30. So I had everything a lot written down, and I started putting together some of what happened to me. And, and it just evolved into a book. I never really intended to write a book. It just turned into one.
That's always a good way.
I actually had learned how to write a book after I already wrote it, because then I had to go back and actually make it right.
I think that is actually how it happens for a lot of us. It happened that way for me too.
Did it? Yeah.
So how did all of those amazing experiences influence you to write about the underlying love stories as well?
Well, it was tough because I left a lot of it out at first because it was too hard to go there.
Right.
And actually I left my ex out of the book almost completely because I really didn't want to go there. Yeah, so I thought, well, I think I'll just avoid all of that. And then early readers were saying, there's something missing here, and they're like, well, and I'm like, well, yeah, I left out the relationship with so-and-so, and I just left out my ex, and they're like, well, you can't do that. You make it sound like you didn't have anything going on, and you did,
Yes.
And I, well, okay. So fortunately, my journals were very detailed, and I ended up going back in and slowly putting those things in there. But that was a very emotional time for me. Absolutely. Writing about falling in love and then having it fall apart and things not working out. And actually, the hardest part was writing about my ex when I was falling in love with him when I no longer felt that way.
Yes, I can imagine. Gosh.
That's why I just didn't want to go there. Yes. I thought, how in the world am I going to write about that? How in the world am I going to make the reader believe that I'm falling for this person when everything between us just completely fell apart and I didn't love him anymore? And I thought, but it took me a lot of writing something and then walking away. I just had to walk away.
Right.
It was tough.
But also a cathartic experience, I would imagine.
Well, I'm often asked that, that was it cathartic? And at the time I thought no, because every time I had to, obviously I had to edit, so I'd think, oh, finally I'm done with that section. Well, no, you're not, 'cause you're going to have to go back,
That's hard.
And yeah, it was. And then I'd be upset all over again.
Yeah.
I think it didn't start feeling cathartic to me until probably a year after the book published.
Right.
And then I was finally able to let it go. When I wrote it, it was not. It just stirred up a lot of grief and sorrow, and that things didn't work out, and I felt resentful again that my life didn't go the way I'd planned, and I felt betrayed by my injury and by my career ending and by my the relationship with my ex, which actually we remained friends for 10 years until he found somebody else, and now he acts like he doesn't know who I am.
Oh gosh, that's harsh.
That was harsh, and I was running into him every now and then. We still live in the same area. I just couldn't understand why he was doing that to me, because we remained friends for 10 years after the divorce, and then all of a sudden cut me off. I felt like I got divorced all over again.
Yes, that must be hard. But I suspect it might be something to do with the other lady in his life. She might have been the one that said, there must be a line in the sand, darling. You're not allowed. Because women sometimes, men too, get threatened by previous relationships, especially if they've been going on for a long time. So this sounds amazing to me because it's kind of mirrors my life a little bit. I also lost my career through injury and also wrote a kind of memoir that I turned into a novel in the end. So I learned a lot and I had to face a lot while I was writing it. Did it also allow you to go through a process where you could then, as you say, let go, feel freer, and move on?
Eventually, yes. When it got to, and I was telling you how when I was editing, how I'd like, oh no, I'm back to this part again. Oh, I don't want to write about this. And eventually I could desensitize myself and step back and look at it. And actually, at one time, it was so hard for me, I wrote it in third person. Then switched it. Yeah, so that helped me just step away. But it is something that, I would work on a particular section and then I would feel terrible for days. And I had no qualms about just walking away from the book and just go for a hike, go do something else, just go. And there were things that, I felt really, there were times where I wondered, did I make the right decision, even though my ex was abusive? And I still wonder, a lot of women do that. They feel like, I didn't want to paint him out to be a monster because he wasn't. And I contributed a lot, too, because I was depressed and he didn't know how to deal with a depressed wife. He didn't know what to do with me. And one time he just told me, look, I'm sick of hearing about this. Why don't you just go get the shotgun and get it over with?
Oh.
Yeah,
yes.
And I didn't forgive him for that ever. And I never could. He's apologized. He apologized, I think about a year later when we were counseling together. He apologized for saying that. And I remember thinking, it's too late.
That's a terrible thing.
You can't take back some things. No. You just can't take them back. So I can look at some of the things that happened between us and think, you did the right thing. What are you talking about? Of course you did the right thing.
You mean walking away?
In a way. No, he was physically and verbally abusive to me at times. And I put up with it. I thought to myself, you married the guy. You made your bed. You need to lie in it. This is the way it's going to be. And I didn't want to give up my home. We had a lovely home together, and I didn't want to give it up. And I knew that I would have to, because I knew there was no way in the world he would let me have it. And I wasn't going to fight him for it. And that's what I ended up, when I finally made the decision to leave, I let him have it.
Right.
And bought my own place. So yeah, there was a lot of things to work out, and the book, definitely helped me work through all of those things.
Yeah, because often when people are depressed and you go and see a counsellor, the advice they give is to journal, isn't it? To journal.
Yeah.
So in a way, that's what you were doing all those years.
Yeah. And it was something that, I relied very heavily on my journals, and I used to write. My gosh, I used to write pages and pages and pages a night. And at first, I tried to write the memoir without looking at those things, thinking, "Oh, you've got a good memory."
Right.
No, I do have a good memory, but there were things where I thought, "Oh, yeah," So,
yeah.
And it was important. Some of those things, and then making a decision of what's important to keep and what don't I want to keep.
Right.
You know, so that's why the editing course takes forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, it does.
It's like, I figure the only way I'll ever stop editing is once it's in print. You know,
Not even then, because I rewrite my
even
books.
then, you know, even then.
Oh dear, yeah. You raise a very, very important point, I feel, because we were talking about romances earlier on before we started recording. Romance has been around for a long, long time. It's written by, used to be, now there are men writing and reading it, but it used to be written for women, by women, about women's lives. And the point that you raise is extremely important, I feel, because a lot of us women, especially, feel that even though we are in relationships that don't necessarily support us, we've made our bed, we've got to lie in it. And we stay in relationships possibly longer than we should because of
absolutely.
that.
Yes.
Right? And with that comes the guilt of, but I shouldn't be wanting to leave. I shouldn't be wanting something more for myself.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
You know, absolutely. And it took me, when I finally made the decision, that was when I finally settled into my career and I was making more money than my ex was. And I realized I can do this.
Right.
And of course, can you imagine the blow when I lost my job, though? So, yeah. So, of course, I'm going, oh, my God, what did I just do?
Right.
You know. No, but you're right. I mean, I did stay a lot long, 23 years. We didn't really have a relationship by the last few years. We were roommates.
Right.
And his job, and it was very easy because his job, he was gone all the time. So for the most part, I felt like I was living there alone, except on the weekends when he came home. And then I would just have to be really careful. I'd be walking on eggshells all weekend. Don't make him mad. You know, let's not have a fight. You know, he's only here 2 days.
Ooh.
I mean, I talked myself into, well, I mean, I'd see it now, of course, but at the time I didn't think about it. That was my life. You're alone 5 days a week. You're pretty much living on your own.
Yeah. And that happens, I think, to a lot of women. A lot of women go through that and think it's normal until it's not.
Yeah, until I realized how miserably unhappy I was.
Yeah.
And he knew. I mean, he said, you don't laugh anymore. How come you're just, you know, you're not fun to be around anymore? And I'm thinking, well, why would I be? You know, every time I'm always afraid I'm going to say something to set you off and you're going to punch a hole in the wall, you know.
That's not good, is it?
And I lived my life in fear of him.
Oh, darling.
And it's something that I just wouldn't admit to myself. You know, I just kept thinking, I can work through that, you know, it'll be okay. You know. Then he started talking about retiring early. And I said, well, what are you going to do all day? He says, I'll just hang around the house. And
oh, no.
And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I can't live like that. No, I cannot live like that. No.
So is that what made you decide? Was that the sort of final straw?
Well, that, and we got into a big argument, and I had him arrested.
Oh.
I called the police and had him arrested. And he was mad at me. They came and removed him from the house, and they forced him to go to anger management. And I thought, you need it. And so he actually connected very well with his counselor, and things got better. And I thought, okay, you know, we can do this. It'll be okay. And then I realized it only took a couple months before he was right back to doing same things. And I realized he's not going to change.
No.
And I'm so unhappy. I realized I am so unhappy. And, you know, by then I'm 48.
But you obviously made the right decision for you, because then it led on to you going back to college.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Oh, I started college. I'd never been to college. So, yeah, I started college for the first time when I was 29.
Right.
And went through a 4-year program and then went back and got a master's degree a couple years later. So, yeah, no, you know, good things did come out of all of that.
And so, I mean, how long ago was your memoir published?
It was 2 years ago, May 1st.
Oh, happy anniversary for your memoir.
Yeah, when May 1st came, I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. You know, it's like, and it's still, I mean, it's still selling, and I still do book talks, and I still have signings, and I still get asked to do interviews. So it doesn't feel like it's been 2 years.
No, I'm not surprised, because the topics that you raise is very important and very relevant, I think, to today's life. I don't know about the States, but here in the UK, we're in lockdown. And I keep hearing about people in abusive relationships, and they can't get out because they're in lockdown.
Yes, it's happening here too. The abuse has gone up.
So, I mean, I think, like we said before, romance and books for women, by women, written about women's lives, this is very important. And so whether it's a memoir or a novel, I think it's relevant, isn't it? So how did you get past it? What happened afterwards? How did you fall in love again? Are you open to love again? Or has it closed your heart?
Well, it was closed for a while. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about that. And I did date after the divorce. And the first person that I dated lasted 2.5 years, probably a year longer than it should have. But he was like an emotional crutch for me because I was still recovering from the divorce.
Right.
And then I realized, what am I doing? This is not working for me. So I ended that. And then subsequently, relationships got shorter and shorter. I got to the point where I put up with a whole lot less. I call them red flags. So if I see a yellow flag, well, okay. Then it gets to be an orange one. And I'm thinking, okay, be careful here. And when I see red flags, I think, you need to think about this. And I am a lot quicker, or I became a lot quicker to say, this is unacceptable behavior. I am done. And I wrote it off as being totally and completely done until a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. I met someone on an international pen pal site.
Oh.
And we just started corresponding. He's a gardener, and I like to garden. Mm-hmm. And he sent a very polite, message, I'd love to talk gardening. What do you think? And we ended up emailing or messaging through the website every single day.
Right.
Then we decided to actually see each other, so we tried Skype. And so long story short, we fell in love with each other.
That's
and
wonderful.
He's come out to see me. He came out in January, and we spent a couple weeks together and realized, no, we're not dreaming. This is real.
Oh, that's lovely.
So we don't know what we're going to do, because he lives 5,000 miles away from me, but we just enjoy it. We talk to each other every single day. And of course, with the virus now, of course, he couldn't come here if he wanted to now. So we're just making do, and we're making plans to see each other again.
That's wonderful.
And he was the same way, and he's divorced, and he'd actually just cut himself. He said, I am not interested. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just fed up, done. And we didn't meet looking for anybody. We met because we had something in common.
Right. That's wonderful.
And that's the way to do it. I mean, and that's why I've always believed that it should be. But I had pretty much given up because I was just not meeting anybody that either that had anything in common with me, or that would be so. Like I said, that I see a red flag of either they're controlling, the jealousy thing. I have no patience for jealousy.
No, life is too short.
Even jealous of my girlfriends.
That's silly.
It is silly. It's totally, So that was like, no, I don't put up with anything anymore.
Yeah.
I'm finding, finally, I put my foot down and say, I don't have to put up with that, and I'm not going to.
Well done, you. Well done, you. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you, because it is so difficult to overcome something that's that traumatic. Don't you think? I mean, a lot of people never overcome that, never open themselves up, never, move past that. They stay in that place, and sadly, that's where they stay.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to find that you were able to go, right, that's it. I've learned. I'm not putting up with this. I'm moving on.
And you're right. A lot of people don't ever figure it out. But one thing I know about myself, and I have to remind myself of this, is that, and friends will remind me of this, is how tenacious I can be. It may take me a while to accept something, but once I do, then, and that's what got me through, of being a firefighter with all men for 7 years, is that I was tenacious. I really wanted that job, and I didn't care what, if the harder they made it for me, the more determined I was to keep doing it. It's just like, you can't tell me what I can't do.
That's wonderful. I love that.
And and I, it's like, what do you mean you can't tell me that? And I look, and that was something that I learned with writing my book, is I looked back at, because I was feeling very vulnerable, and like I said, I was looking back at more depression now, especially losing my mom. That was an extremely difficult time for me.
I can imagine.
And so I had to look back when I was working on the book, and I was reading my journals. I was thinking, who is this woman?
Right.
What happened to her? So I've had I don't know if you've ever heard this question asked, what would you tell your younger self if you could?
Yes, what would you?
I see it the other way around. My younger self told me, you are still her.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And I realized I was the strong 20-year-old who wanted to do something that was unconventional, not welcome. It's just, the Forest Service was an agency that did not want women working for them, although they were forced to do it because of the laws. And yet, I just kept pushing for it. And I realized I'm still her. I can still push for what I want. I don't, and that's how I ended up. I never did find a job, so I started my own business. I gave up looking for work. I thought it's not going to happen, and I'm not going to take something that I don't want to do. I'm not going to spend all that education. I'm not going to wait on tables. There's no way in the world that I'm going to take something that's less than what I want.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been easy being self-employed, but it's certainly better than the alternative.
That's fantastic. People write kick-ass heroines, but you are a real life kick-ass heroine, darling. It's brilliant. I love it. That's so cool. But that is an incredible message as well, because you're right. People always say, well, what would you tell your younger self? But we can learn something amazing from our younger selves as we get older too, because you're right. We sometimes lose bits of ourselves as we get older. And it's sometimes very good to remember who we once were, because that person is still inside us.
Exactly. When you're 20, you do things that you would, now you have to, you think about it, you second guess it, and you worry about it, you're scared. And you weren't when you were 20.
No, you were fearless.
It's like, worked on a fire crew with a bunch of guys? No problem.
That's so brilliant. I love that. But you look so feminine. I just have to tell the readers,
I always had to keep that.
feminine.
I never lost that. No, I always had to keep that.
Because I think people think, well, if you're a fireman, especially amongst men, that you should be like rough and tough. But you're a tiny, feminine lady.
That was something that I wrote about a lot, was that I wanted to keep my feminine side. I did not want to be one of the guys. And so, I'm meeting, since my book came out, and I meet women who are firefighters, and obviously they connect with my book or they come to a signing. Right. And they're really tough and everything. And I think, that just wasn't me. Yeah. I was just me.
Yeah.
I just happened to be a woman who really liked to work hard. And I really found it fascinating how you never know how far you can push yourself until you try.
Yes.
And when I fought my first fire, I remember thinking, wow, I just did that. Holy cow.
That's amazing.
Was it easy? Heck no. It was extreme. I had blisters. I was exhausted. Everything in my body hurt, and I couldn't wait to do it again. I felt so proud of myself that I'd accomplished that. So I think looking at your younger self, I think as you get older, you can get a lot from your younger self.
Yes. I think also you're probably the kind of person who would go and colonize Mars.
I'm not anywhere near as brave as I was, although I am pretty independent. I'm still fiercely independent. And that's why, if I meet somebody and they're starting to see those red flags of control, it's like, that will never work for me.
So you said that you've also written a second book.
I have, and it's with my publisher, and I'm waiting to hear back. So this is more of a coming of age.
Right.
So this is what took place before I became a firefighter.
Ah, okay.
And this has a lot of love in it, because I am 16 years old, and I just moved 2,500 miles in the middle of my senior year of high school to a strange place. My parents said, we're going, so they moved me. And I never had a boyfriend in high school. I always had crushes, but nobody was particularly interested in me, and I was unpopular. And I remember thinking, well, when I moved to Arizona, I'll be a new me. I'll figure it out, be a new me. I started dating somebody the day we moved in.
Wow,
He helped unload the moving van. He was the son of my dad's business partner. And he asked me out, and I'm thinking, wow, oh my gosh, my first date. Just and then he promptly dumped me a month later in front of my entire school, in the hallway of school. because he decided I didn't fit in because I didn't do drugs and drink like his friends did. So he decided that I was not part of his group. So he broke up with me, and I was completely, now I'm in a totally strange place and nobody will talk to me.
Oh, for goodness sake.
So, and then, then I start corresponding with someone that I knew back in New York, and we realized that we really liked each other, and I thought it was love, and I thought it was love for years, and then he joined the Navy, and so there's a lot of complex of, okay, what is love? Is what I'm feeling love? At the same time, I started meeting boys in the town that I've lived in, and I'm wondering, well, is this love? Or is it the love I feel for somebody else? Or can you love two people at the same time? Can you love somebody and not want to have a sexual relationship with them? Can you just be a good friend? Because I had a guy that was a really good friend and I didn't have any feelings for him otherwise. So wading through all of that, what is it? And
that's a good question.
I mean, and at the same time, I'm trying to find a career of some sorts. And I'm a high school graduate with no college plans. My parents couldn't afford college, and I just knew I wanted to do something, but I didn't want to be a waitress. I didn't want to be a secretary. I didn't want to work in a store on a sales clerk. And there really wasn't much else for a young girl to do in 1973.
Right.
If you didn't go to college, that was pretty much it. So it's my weaving my way through relationships with the guys of, is it love or is it not? And what do I want to do with my life? And working my way toward eventually landing a job with the U.S. Forest Service and becoming a firefighter. So there is a lot of love in there, and there is a lot, and I am amazed at what I wrote in my journals about questioning what is love.
It's a very interesting question, because I think there are people who live their entire lives without ever finding out what love really is, first of all, or secondly, actually finding it.
Yes.
So did you find out what it was? Did you ever find out?
I have, yes, but it took me until, I would say in my 50s before I really started to understand it, and
right.
And I answered the questions. I had absolutely no problem answering the question, can you love more than one person at the same time? Of course you can.
Of course you can. Because you have a whole group of friends and you all love them equally, but in different ways, right?
In different ways. And I used to, and I remember wondering, so is this real love, or for the lack of a better word, not real love? And I did, and I've learned the hard way that love is not infatuation.
Right.
And it's not just sexual attraction, because you can be attracted to somebody but not feel love for them. That happens.
Yes, it does.
And you can actually not even like them very much and still feel that. You can separate that. So it is interesting, and it's something that I remember. I mean, back in the 70s, I had one guy who was just head over heels over me, but I didn't feel the same way. And yet I couldn't stay away from him. He had this magnetism about him that I couldn't stay away from him, even though I didn't feel the same way he did. And he would tell me, men and women can't be friends. It's absolutely impossible. And he would tell me that he was in love with me, and I would tell him, no, you're not, because, you're only thinking about the sexual aspect of this relationship, and I'm not there, and that's not how I feel about you. And we used to have these arguments about what love was and was not.
And that probably made it worse for him.
Made it worse for him. That was a relationship that lasted years. And actually we would break up and then get back together again. And then I finally realized that I did love him. Yeah. But he'd moved on. And he even shows up in Summers of Fire. I run into him again and have to make the decision. Do I really want to go through this again with this guy? Because he just jerked me around so much. I don't think he knew what he wanted, and I think he was very insecure. And I can look back now, and say
and see it.
But I just remember a lot of our discussions would be, what is love and what is it not? And it's a puzzle, especially when you're young. It is a puzzle of trying to figure out what is it that I'm feeling for this person.
Yes.
Where's it coming from? And you can love someone and there's no way in the world you could ever be with them forever.
Right. That's true too. I know several people who are together. They're not married. Well, actually one couple is married, but they live in separate houses.
I hear this too. Yeah, separate houses.
And it works. Yeah.
It works, you know. So they don't have to drive each other nuts when they don't.
Yeah. But love is a very interesting thing because, like you said, it's kind of like digging up what it actually is and what it means for you. Because I had a discussion with a male friend of mine about this not very long ago. We had a chat about love, and it was very interesting what he said because I hadn't thought of it like that. He said, it's very important that when somebody loves you, you recognize it as love. Because there are many people who love you, but they don't love you in a way that you recognize as love. You don't resonate together on the same frequency. And
that's fascinating. I agree with that.
Yeah, it astonished me because until he said it, I hadn't really thought of it like that. But it's true, isn't it? I mean, we have relationships, especially romantic relationships with people, where we love each other, you love each other, and there is compatibility. And sometimes, if you're lucky, there's also a sexual compatibility. But there is always something, it seems, missing because it doesn't resonate. So the person loves you, but you don't recognize it as the kind of love that you would give.
Exactly. That's something that you have to learn, is that you are going to experience a different kind of love than they are. And I also firmly believe that not one person can ever fulfill all of your emotional and physical needs, in the sense that you have to have friends, you have to have somebody else. You can't have just one person who is everything. That's just not, it can't happen.
It can't. You're absolutely right. And it's not
healthy either.
It definitely isn't. Which is why when you said earlier about people feeling jealous of your girlfriends, that's just nuts, because you need you need other people to, as you say, fulfill different parts of who you are.
Yeah, the first time that a guy told me, because my best friend in the world, who I've been best friends with since I was 14, and we still are.
Wow, okay.
She lives 2,000 miles away, so we haven't seen each other in a very long time, and we don't talk very often because she's very busy. But she happened to call once when I was on the phone with a guy that I'd been out with a couple times, right. And we'd pretty much finished our conversation, and I said, "Oh my gosh, my best friend in the world is calling, and I'll call you back. I've got to talk to her. I promise I'll call you right back when we're done."
Right.
And he was furious with me.
Ooh.
And that was it.
Yeah.
That was it. And when I did call him back like a half an hour later, and he was just very, how dare you? And he says, "So I'm in competition now with this girl." And I said, "Actually, no, you're not."
That is weird.
Oh, I was just, like I said, that was it. There was no point in going out with him again. I just told him that.
No. Well, I can't thank you enough. I think we've come nearly to the end of our conversation.
It went fast.
It went really fast. But you raised so many amazing points. And I want to thank you for that, because I think it's also for women listening to this, learning something. Like you said, when we're younger, we need to learn things that we don't know. And hopefully with age, we learn a bit more, right? And so I think it's always important to listen to these kinds of conversations with people from different ages, because you learn so much and you see things in a different way, right? Because we all live in our own universe, and so you only can experience things through your own filters. But when you hear of other people's experiences, I suspect that is probably also why we read so voraciously.
Oh, I think so. And it's interesting is that Summers of Fire does have a lot of adventure and firefighting, but it also has a lot of love and very personal things in there. And yet I have a heck of a lot of male readers that absolutely love the book.
Do you think it's because it's about firefighting, or?
They relate to both. It is interesting when I do read the reviews, and it's interesting to see what they pick up on. And it usually comes down to, they love the excitement and the firefighting, and that's fascinating to them, but they also are fascinated of how I rebuild my life and start everything all over again.
Yes.
And, going through some, really tough times, they come right out and say, "Wow, that guy was a real jerk. I'm glad you didn't end up with him." So,
gosh, yeah.
But it's interesting, because I think some men do like to read about love as well. I think they do.
Yes, I agree.
They're not voracious about it, with women. I think women are always looking for maybe feeling like what they feel is normal because somebody else has written about it. So, oh yeah, see, they're not. Oh yeah, thank God,
Yeah, I can relate. Well, thank you so much. I now am going to have to read your book. You realise, because it sounds so amazing. So I invite all the other listeners to read it with me. It sounds wonderful. What is it called again?
It's Summers of Fire, a memoir of adventure, love, and courage.
It sounds perfect and amazing, and I have to read it now. I'll put all the details down below the video as well, so people can find you, they can find your book and everything. It's wonderful. It's so wonderful to talk to you, Linda. You are an inspirational lady. You really are. I'm so thrilled that you came on the podcast and talked to us today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's always fun and it's been a delight to talk to you about it today.
Thank you.